be on. Yep, I've got mine enabled.
Yeah, I can see you now and sort of hear you.
Hey, there we go. That's good. I think we are actually live as well. So yeah, this is Riverside, as you could tell by the link, which records the video on my PC so I can edit it if I want, but also goes straight onto YouTube Live.
Right,
So I did one earlier on this week and it seemed to work.
right.
So that is good. Now, I've got Super Geek under my name. What title do you want
Oh, God.
under your name? No pressure there, is
I
there? And
know.
I realise you didn't have one.
No, throw us straight into the deep end, I would.
Or do you want at Cryptic Tadpole or something like that under there? Or you could pick whatever you wish. I'm literally about to type it for you.
Just put down cryptic, that's fine. Fine with me.
Cryptic Tadpole. There we go.
It's typical as well. My cat has
There we
been
go.
my cat has been asleep all the way until this point, and now he wants attention.
I didn't even know you had a cat.
Yes. Come here. Come here.
Oh, cat's name?
Ozzy.
Ozzy. After Ozzy Osbourne or after
Yes.
Australia or after Ozzy Osbourne?
It was my friend's cat, but he's about to become a parent for the second time. They're about to
Oh,
have a
wow.
son. As a matter of fact, the due date was in a couple of weeks' time, but they're looking to potentially bring it forward to this Friday coming up. So
Okay.
I had two cats, and so two cats and two children. I thought, you know what? Even though I'm not technically supposed to have cats, I went,
Yeah.
just to be fair, it's because it's going to be too much for you to look after. Two cats, two children. I'll take them. And then
Well,
if
also, technically, you're just looking after the cat.
yeah,
You know.
that was my thinking. I said that if the council
Yeah.
comes, you can either just come and pick them up, which
Yeah.
he said that's what he'll do. Um,
Hmm.
Also things like vaccinations and stuff like that, they're still in my friend's name. Obviously, I'll have to pay
Yeah.
for it to get vaccinations done. For example, next year at download, I have to pay to put them in a category and get a
Yeah.
vaccination done before I can actually go to download.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's going to cost us around about £200 to do all of that. I'll be responsible for that. But if the council comes or whatever, then he said he'll come and pick them up.
You're just looking after the cat. It's a nice thing to do for a friend,
Yep.
isn't it?
So
So,
he's
how long has Ozzy been with you then?
um, about a month, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
Isn't that right? He's looking
You
at
two
us
get
going, yes.
you two getting on well?
He seems to be. He seems to have.
Yeah.
He's now like in charge of the flat, so I would probably say that's a yes from his
I would.
standpoint of view.
I would. And how do you feel about having a bit of company in your house?
He's fine. He wakes us up every single morning at exactly the same time, between 6:30 and 7 o'clock,
Wow.
wanting attention and licking me nose.
Yep.
So,
Sounds like a cat.
yep,
Yeah. How's the weather where you are? It's like it's turning into a sauna where I am.
it's
It's
boiling.
just this. It's really warm.
Yeah, I've had to close my sitting room window just because the fact that I live on a street with barking dogs and I didn't want barking dogs to be picked up on the mic, so I've closed my
No.
window up for now. But as soon as I
Well,
finish this, the window's going up and the new fan that I bought, that's going on. So,
do not worry. Do not worry or be concerned if you've got meowing cats on the call. Cats are always welcome on podcasts. So
yep.
that's the thing.
And
How's life treating you other than obtaining a cat to look after for a bit?
same old, actually. Health problems still existing with a few more thrown on top for good measures.
Yeah.
Work still being an absolute pain in the arse, so much so that I've got a job interview tomorrow for a different
Oh
job.
wow. Yep.
Because the job that I'm currently doing, I just really do not click well with it at all. So I need to get out of there. I think the biggest stumbling block for me is that it's a permanently working from home job that I've currently got. And
Yeah.
surprisingly, I like to actually work in an office.
Yeah. You like being out, don't
It
you?
gets me out of the flat, so now I spend about 95% of the time in my flat, which is really
Yeah.
frustratingly annoying. And I just don't like the speaking to people, that's fine. As soon as a call comes through, you sort of like go into call center mode. So speaking to
Hmm.
people, that's fine. I just don't get on with the job because the amount of rules and regulations that are in place is there's so
Yeah.
many.
That was always my argument. It was like because I guess we did a similar job, or I did, but you still do, where you know how to do it, you know what what to do, but yet the amount of red tape and hoops you've got to jump through and X, Y, Z prevents you from doing the job that you know how to do and you could probably do in your sleep.
Yeah,
That's why I
exactly.
got fed up with mine. I'm like, if you leave me to my own devices, you'll get your job done. You don't have to micromanage me constantly or tell me how many messages I must reply to in an hour. And if I'm one under that, it's like, give me a break. So yeah, I ended up just going, it's my sanity or it's the job.
Yeah.
And I opted for my sanity, which I think I've pretty much got back. So,
It's so stat heavy that you're
yeah,
constantly getting messages in the group chat which we have where it's going, also this is your wrap up, this is how long you've been on a conversation with a customer, this is how many people you've spoken to,
hmm
this is what your percentage is, this is what it should be. And you get like that like twice, three times a day in that chat. Then you get emails sent you going, these are your stats for that first few hours, these are your stats for your next few hours. And I'm
yeah,
just looking at it going, it feels like I'm back at school. I'm 44 and I feel like I'm
yeah.
10. So,
I I had that when it's all the stuff you've just rattled off was exactly it. To the point once I got a message from my team leader because when we're at home, because apparently over that 11-hour shift, I'd spent like 4.5 minutes on a bathroom break in two separate occasions. Was I okay? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like,
yeah,
early 50s. Give me a break.
I'm
For
an
God's sake, like, I
adult.
do it constantly, but it's like I'm an adult. You don't have to if my Teams wasn't working, for example, I'm not going to go, oh, I just won't do any work. I'm going to do my job because I know that's what I paid for. But yeah, I got sick of the stat. Here's how many you've done, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember speaking to Mick Garris and he's like, oh, God, rather you than me, I couldn't do that job. I'm like, well, if Mick Garris says I shouldn't do it, I'm off. I
Mm.
resign.
Me-
So that was that. So it was Mick Garris's fault that I quit.
In that case,
So
there, maybe I should have a conversation with Mick Garris as well then.
do. Yeah, I was sitting down with him and we were just chatting about work before like the interview thing, and I said, "Oh, I do customer service for a living," and he laughed. He went, "Oh, I couldn't do that." And I said, "What?" He said, "How long have you done it?" I said, "Well, I've done this particular role for like 6 years," and he's like, "Oh, oh no, I couldn't do that." And I'm like, "Right." So yeah, have a chat to Mick, tweet him or whatever. Go, Mick,
Yeah,
should I leave my job? What should I do?
I've been in this
So
kind of role for 8 years, so I think I've lasted
it's
longer than
awful.
you.
It's
So
awful.
I need to get out of it. So
Yep.
fingers crossed the job interview tomorrow goes well, so then I can actually say bye bye to this job.
Yeah. 'Cause it's kind of scary though, isn't it? Because it's like if you've been in a role for 8 years, you're like, can I do something else? You know you can, but there's still
Hmm.
that thing in your brain where you're like, but can I?
Yeah.
And yes, you can is the answer. So
It's just the job interview part, which I haven't done one in quite a few years, and so the amount of sort of like work that you have to do even before the interview, and then the interview's gone quicker than it takes you for you to actually just write them
yeah,
down. Because the best thing about this interview is that it's 6 questions that you get potentially could be asked, but out of those 6 questions, you're only going to be asked three. And they were
okay,
nice enough to send over those questions, what you're going to be asked, so then you can prepare for them rather than just going in completely dark and blind. Obviously, you're going to be
yeah,
asked other things around them, but those are the three main questions where you've got to give very chunky answers. And
yeah,
so, this piece of paper, because I do come to the shows writing down notes,
yeah.
I originally started on pieces of paper like this to write down my three responses to the questions. They weren't big
Mm-hmm.
enough. So then I
So now
got
it turns into like,
so then I got pieces of paper that big,
okay,
and
yeah,
each one of my answers fills the entirety of one side. For
yeah,
each one of the three questions with an example using the star technique and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to have them down beside me, and then in the same kind of position that I am here, which is I think it's a really good position because then I've got this down beside me, so then I can quickly just
yeah,
look at it and go, oh well, this, and this, and so hopefully, fingers crossed, it comes out
yeah.
positively.
Also, sometimes sticking it behind your monitor can work quite well because then you're just looking up then rather than if you want to hide the fact that you've got your notes, just put it
Yeah,
above it. It's like, all right, got it.
I'm in a position where, because the monitors I've got are actually set at an angle, the one that's
Ah, okay.
directly in front of me is more of an angle, so they will sort of like be slanting off in that direction rather than just looking on straight. So it's because I
Yeah.
don't have enough room, if I'm being honest.
Well, fingers crossed for you for tomorrow. So
I need
let
it.
me know how it goes. You can talk though, can't you? So it's like it's just the thought of the interview rather than
Yeah,
once you're in the interview, you're fine because you've no choice but to go, right, I'm just gonna get to the end of this thing. But it's the run up to it that kind of
I
is a
think
bit nerve wracking, I think.
what helps me in this instance is a couple of things. Firstly, is it's on Teams, so it's not the fact that I have to actually physically go into somewhere and do
Yeah,
the interview, and I think that works in a lot of people's favours because sitting
yeah,
beside somebody to do an interview can be a lot more nerve wracking, and then you can have
mm,
notes. And the second thing is I've done podcasts before, and so I think by doing it through Teams, I think podcasts help you because then the way
yeah,
I prepared again for the Monday Movie Show was so a few little notes beside me, and then if I got stuck or forgot where I am, quickly just glance down at the notes, and then that's it. And so it's going to be sort of
hmm,
like a similar kind of situation. I'm just going to treat it like something like this.
yeah. And what time is your interview?
2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Cool. I will be beaming out happy thoughts by 2 o'clock then. So fingers crossed.
Brilliant.
So, what have you been watching then? Have you got some good films? You got some terrible films?
Well,
Hopefully, some good ones.
the way I thought I would actually do it is different to last month. Last month I came with like 18 films, and
You
so
did.
it was a ton. So I've stripped that back completely, and so I've only got 6 films
Hmm.
to talk about. And I thought, you know what, let's concentrate on not just like the biggest films, rather than put in a few of these throwaway films, because I do watch some throwaway films when you flick through Amazon or Netflix and you go, oh well,
Yeah.
the description of that seems all right, and you watch it and think, well, I could probably talk about that for about 30 seconds, and that's about it. So
Hmm.
like, yeah, a bargain basement kind of situation. So I thought I'll throw those out the window this month and just go with pretty much the biggest films that I've seen, which would engage conversation rather than just go, I've
Of
seen this,
course.
it's shit, bye.
Yep.
Um, so I'll leave the one at the top of my list till last because it's not officially out here in the UK until August, but I've actually
Okay.
seen it because I was
Okay.
sent a screener of it. So the first one is John Wick Presents Ballerina.
I really wanted to watch. It's gone from my local cinema now, though. It's like what?
I
I wanted
think
to watch it.
I think my cinema's still got one showing of it, but the
Yeah.
best thing about my cinema is it's upgraded itself. It's a different company now. It's now an Omniplex rather than an Empire, and they've only got 7 screens currently on at the moment because they're doing a full-on refurbishment of the whole place. So now I've got technically an IMAX screen. It's called a Max screen. The
Yep.
seats fully recline. All seats fully
Oh,
recline. They're so comfortable. It has an unlimited card as well, which is fourteen ninety
nice.
nine a month.
Yep.
And the screen quality is better than before. The sound quality is better before. But the big thumbs up is the fact that they've spent money on it to actually refurbish the place, so it's got its own identity rather than just
Hmm.
use what was there and then slap their name on it and that's it. And
Yeah.
the seats, like I said, are so comfortable.
Nice.
And rather than but one of the things I hate about going to the cinema is I always used to strategically choose a seat where I knew that somebody couldn't get past me. So, like, when you can probably guarantee that somebody turns up 10 minutes late to a film and they just want to do
Yep.
the just
Yep.
squeeze
Excuse
past
me.
you.
It's like, oh.
Well, these seats have got a huge gap in front of you because with them reclining, you need to put your feet up anyway. So even if you're
Yeah.
reclining, they can easily walk past you to get to their seat. So the gap
Nice.
between your seat and the next seat is very big. And so they've thought about everything. They've thought, you know what? Because we don't need a screen where it's got, say, 250 seats in. We've crunched the numbers from the previous company. We've seen, we might get 150, 200 people. So let's make it so that the gaps between them are fine. And then they've got the smaller screen in the cinema has only got 20 seats in it, but they are full
Wow.
on reclined sofas. So the 2-seater sofas where you can literally put your feet up. You've got a tray that you can bring it round. You can bring in your hot dog and your nachos and your popcorn and all that kind of stuff. And you can pretty much just lie back and watch the film.
What sort of film do you think they would show in a 20-seater screen? Though? Would that be like an
So
art house or a private rental type
they
screen?
they opened it up on Saturday. Um, sorry, on Friday, just gone. And the first film they
Mm.
showed in it was 28 years later. Even though 28 years
Okay.
later is a new film, the way they
Yeah.
did it is they showed 28 years later. The sort of like, again, they probably looked at the times of when they could show a film like 28 years later, where they know they're not going to get a load of people midweek,
Hmm.
for example, midweek after 7 o'clock. So they put it on in that screen just for one showing or two showings late at night. So that's the way they strategically done it. Or when they'll show
Okay.
Bollywood films, or as you
Yeah.
said, a small release. So instead of just using the they'll use the big screens for the big films, and then
Yeah.
they'll use the little screens for the films where they know they're not going to get a ton of people in, but there's sort of like people that really do want to see it. So they're thinking
Yeah.
about the
You're not
customers.
gonna chuck Lilo and Stitch in there, are you? In
No,
opening
and
week.
unless you're getting very close to say maybe it's like week 3, week 4, and then
Yeah.
you go, well,
Yeah.
there's one. We're only going to be showing one showing of this film. Let's put it in screen 8, which is the
Yeah.
comfy screen. So I've yet to try it yet because it opened with 28 years later, and I already seen 28 years later, which I'll get onto.
That's on
Uh,
your list. Yeah.
but yeah,
What?
I really want to try it.
So 28 years later seems to be divisive from what I've seen. I haven't seen it yet, but it seems to be people like it, or there's a lot of people who are like it sucks and it's terrible.
Hmm. So
This,
I'll jump from ballerina. We'll go to 28 years
oh yeah,
later.
no,
So
we'll focus on Ballerina for a second because yeah, let's say I want to watch it. Are you a fan of the John Wick movies?
yes slash no.
Okay, why no?
Because you know me, action films are not my oeuvre. They're not like I find them. They can be a bit taxing. They can be the kind of films that follow exactly the same blueprint that you've seen time and time and time and time again, and they don't do very much different to what you've seen before. And I
Yeah,
know film is like that. It's so hard to come up with a unique idea these days. But at least
mm,
in some films, it has at least one thing or a couple of things that you might not have seen, or you haven't been hit over the head multiple times with that kind of trope. And so
yeah,
action films for me does that. It follows the tropey kind ofness, big explosions, loud crashy bang kind of noises, very little sort of like taxing when it comes to storyline. It all focuses on the set pieces and that's it. And
yeah,
I think the John Wick films are sort of like slightly more alleviated above that, just because of the charismatic nature of Keanu Reeves,
yeah.
despite the fact that he's probably not the best actor around, but he's got
No,
that charm. So like
yeah.
getting
He doesn't need to do too much emotional acting in John Wick, does it? It's all physicality and punching people and stuff, and that works for the character, I think.
yeah. And I liked the last John Wick, John Wick Chapter 4. I thought it was actually a pretty decent film. John Wick Chapter 3 is a good film. The second one I think is the worst out of the franchise in that
Hmm.
instance. And the first one is just a story about him getting revenge, dog wise,
Yeah,
etc. And so there's sort of like very loose story strands within inside each one of the John Wick films. But for what they are, they're the popcorn fodder, the popcorn action
hmm,
fodder. But it's not the kind of
yeah,
film where I'll go, ooh, that's in my top 10, which they've
yeah,
never been in my top 10 films of the year. And neither will Ballerina, spoiler. Um,
yeah.
because Ballerina follows exactly the same blueprint. It doesn't deviate away from exactly what has been done before in the previous 4 films. You can tell that it's been messed around with a lot. It's a messy film in
Yeah.
its construction, and the fact that it's went back for so many different reshoots. This film should have
Hmm.
been released at least last year. And I think originally, and you can tell this as well, the way the film sort of like plots itself out, that originally it was just centered around the Anna de Armas character of the ballerina. However, I'm guessing through test screenings when they originally sort of like had that idea and shot the film, the test screenings didn't go down well because it had the John Wick moniker attached to it. And I'm thinking, where's John Wick? Where's Keanu
Yeah.
Reeves? So you can tell the Keanu Reeves set pieces in the film, which is only in the film for about a total of 8 minutes.
Is it?
Or
Is he really? I
yeah,
thought he would have been in longer than that because originally it was supposed to be like a cameo, and
hmm
then the stories came out, and you were right saying that they beefed it up to make it a John Wick movie rather than a ballerina movie. That they'd increased his role to not a co-starring role, but a reasonable sized role within the film. So it's like eight
it's
minutes worth.
it's not a reasonable size role, I would say. It's more like an appearance in the first say half an hour, and then
Yeah.
he's involved in one set piece in the last quarter
Right.
because something happens with inside the story where they think that John Wick can actually be used as a pawn, to try and be able to stop what's actually happening. So
Right.
that's in the last like quarter. So he's in the film for about a total of 8 minutes, and you can see that those scenes feel like reshoots, like they were stuffed into it because they needed to include the John Wick characters. The film never sort of like deviates away from what it is intending to do, and that's the fact that it's very little taxing on the story. We've
Yeah.
seen that story before so many times. Somebody out for revenge is the typical basic action film storyline. And to think that by getting around it, we can just throw tons of action set pieces at the screen. And they do
Hmm.
that. And the action set pieces are crunchy and grimy sometimes with a bit of gore here and there. And it sort of like satiates people's violent nature when it comes to those kind of films. And Anna de Armas sort of like grips onto the role really well. She sort of like, without being too taxing on her when it comes
Okay.
to sort of like emotional and dialogue. It's not heavy on that instance there. I think it's more heavy on a physical, which she does handle that quite well. It's shot decently enough, so it looks fine. Like they didn't decide to go OTT with say like CGI set pieces and have like a plane crash with
Yeah.
lots of CGI flames and stuff. So they didn't go down that route. They realised that by having more enclosed in spaces and let's do more of the hand-to-hand combat in those closed-in spaces, but in the outside spaces, let's have something in regards to shooters trying to actually track her down,
Yeah.
or things like that. So it's fine for what it is. I think I gave it a 3, but for action
Out of
fans,
5. Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty
3 out
good.
of 5. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
for
That's good.
action, I think for action fans, they'll enjoy it. It is that sort of like
Yeah.
typical Friday, Saturday night machismo side sort of like action movie where you go with a group of friends, you go at say like 7 o'clock, you watch a film, and then you go out drinking. Or
Yeah.
it's that kind of the old school Saturday night movies that we used to get on TV in the
Yeah.
80s and 90s with Steven Seagal or Jean Claude Van Damme or Schwarzenegger or Stallone, where it's go, here's Raw Deal or here's Predator or here's this film, Under Siege. That
Yeah.
kind of situation, which I never latched onto those movies ever because I just found them.
Really? Oh god, no! I was into most of those that you've just rattled off. Yeah.
I found them most of them tedious. Things like Predator, I loved Predator, but
Yeah.
I've never liked a Steven Seagal film. Never,
No,
not one single one.
I liked his earlier stuff. So like, I think the first 4 films that he did were pretty good. Not because he was in them, just because they were easy to watch films. But I haven't seen a Seagal film for years.
Neither have
I
I.
dropped off the radar when they were consistently crap.
Yeah,
And then obviously you start to hear about how much of a dick he is. I'm like, I'm good. Don't need
it's
to let him rent in my brain.
it's the same with Jean Claude Van Damme films. I've never liked a Jean Claude Van Damme film. I've never been able
Mm.
to get on with him as an actor. Schwarzenegger is sort of like a different sort of like beast. There is a couple of Schwarzenegger films which I do like.
Yeah,
I think his charismatic nature sort of like pulls him through films like Total Recall.
yeah,
And him being the Terminator. And surprisingly, one of my favorite Schwarzenegger films is when he's not even doing any of that kind of stuff, and that's Mandy. Mandy and
yeah,
Kindergarten Cop. I
yeah,
love Kindergarten Cop because the children are the thing that bring Kindergarten Cop to the forefront. But yeah,
yeah.
Ballerina is for that kind of audience. It's for that kind of
Okay.
audience which sort of like harkens back to watching those stupid action films of the 90s. Don't
Yeah.
expect the kind of nature and level that you would expect from a John Wick film. That's why I think with this film, it would have benefited a little bit more if it did drop the John Wick name. But they probably knew by test screenings originally that it was never going to sell or do well without that John Wick name attached to it. So,
It's probably a bit like, Furiosa in Mad Max stuff, that type of thing, isn't it? Obviously,
mhm.
Furiosa didn't even have Mad Max in it at all, but so at least they've changed that with including Wick in Ballerina. But I'll watch it. I was planning on watching it at the cinema because I knew it was just a popcorn action film. The soundtrack's pretty good. I like the John Wick stuff, the Tyler Bates music. But I'll probably end up just picking it up on VOD or whatever because I kind of miss when films used to stick around in cinemas for like a couple of months. Now,
Mhm.
forget it. They're gone really quick now.
The only ones that seem to do that these days are sort of like kids' films in a way, like the
Yeah, even
Lelos and
Mission
Stitch.
Impossible. I've not managed to see Mission Impossible yet, and I really want to. But it's a 3-hour film. The local cinema to me has got one screening. Starts at 8 o'clock at night, which means it starts at 8:30 at night. And you're like, I don't want to be wandering out at like
Yeah.
11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I'm old and I'm decrepit and battling health stuff. So I'm like, come
I've
9:30, 10:30, I'm ready for going to sleep.
I haven't done a very late night film in years at the cinema, because there used to be
Nope.
times where I did go every now and again to midnight screenings, and I've not done that in years.
What was the last one that you can remember?
Um, it was probably the Avengers double bill, Avengers and then Age of Ultron.
Okay. Wow.
And that was quite a while ago.
And what
Um,
time did Avengers 1 start at midnight and
no,
then followed
so
on 2,
it
or did that
was
start earlier?
Avengers started at 8 o'clock. And then Avengers Age of Ultron was supposed to have started just after midnight, because they obviously could not show the film before midnight. They needed to get into the next day. It was supposed to
Yep.
have started just after midnight and finish around about 2:15, because they weren't showing trailers before it. However, it
Yeah.
started 40 minutes late, so it didn't start until 20 to 1 in the morning. And I didn't get out the cinema until just after 3 o'clock.
I bet you couldn't do that. Could you do that now? I couldn't do that now.
I could, but I don't want to, if I'm being
No,
completely
exactly. Yeah,
honest.
yeah. If I was being paid lots of money to do it, I could do it. I'd just choose not to because it's a bit.
Yeah,
No.
I look at it and go, you know what? I think now I can wait until a reasonable time when I can go in the
Yeah.
cinema, and I don't mind walking back home in the dark. That doesn't bother me at all. But
No.
I'm fine now with going to the cinema, see it at like 7 o'clock at night and watching the film from then. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can't do it now.
No. Me neither. I think the last one I watched was Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was like at 92 or something, and that was supposed to start at midnight, but it sold out. So I ended up waiting until 2 o'clock in the morning for the next screening, watching that, walking home, which was about 8, I don't know how many miles. It was a bunch of miles. Getting home at 6 o'clock in the morning, having 4 hours sleep before a 10-hour shift at the video store for the
Yeah,
day. So yeah, I couldn't do that now. I'd die.
ditto. Um,
Yep.
then I'm going to skip over 28 years later, because that's
Hmm.
probably going to be where a beefy amount of conversation is going to be had with that film. We'll skip over to the How to Train Your Dragon live action remake.
Yep. Hmm.
So I've seen that. If you've seen the first film, you've seen this.
Ah.
It's a
Okay.
pretty much a beat for beat remake of the first film. But in this case here, it's from exactly the same director as the first film, and the second film, and the third film.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
from my knowledge, this is the only time where a director has directed the 3 animated films and the live action movie based on the animated film. So in that case, there you would have thought that he would have expanded it or did something different with the live action one that he couldn't do with the animated one, because there's things that you can do with animation that you definitely can't do with live action, no matter your budget. You can get
Yeah.
away with a lot of things in animation compared to live action. So you would think that he would try, maybe go down a tiny little bit of a different route. Nope, he follows it beat for beat. Like I said, if you've seen the animated version of it, you've seen exactly this film, but just in
I
live
think
action form.
I think if you directed the animated one and then you were coming back for the live, you'd want to do something different just so you're not bored.
Hmm.
Because you're just effectively copying what somebody else has obviously drawn. I guess the director to draw all the cells and stuff for the animated one. But yeah, I don't. It's an unusual choice just to go right. We're just gonna do exactly the same thing.
It's just that the biggest problem though with this is that by not only going down the route of familiar territory, I, if kids are coming to it for the first time who've never seen the original How to Train Your Dragon, because How to Train Your Dragon, the first one came out in 2002. So it's
Yeah,
a while ago since that film actually came out. And so if they've never seen that, which a lot of young children have not, and this is the first time coming to it, I think they're going to get the most out of the film by far.
yeah,
But if you have seen it, it feels like the live action version is slightly more dumbed down. Like, by having real humans play the characters of the animated versions of them, it honestly does feel like the script feels a little bit more dumber. Like, it feels a little bit more childlike. Like, for example, when they're training Hiccup and the few other children as well to try and find out who is going to be slaying the dragon after the trials that they're going through. It just feels like it is Hunger Games, but for the youngest audience possible. Like
Right.
it feels very dumbed down, and the relationship between both Toothless and Hiccup still works because you can sense the heart is still actually there. And so the playful natureness between them both, about Hiccup trying to actually create the device or the extra wing at the back of Toothless, enable him to fly again. Those kind of things still do actually work because you can still see that the director has got a lot of love for that franchise. So in a way, if you did bring in a different director, it might went down a different route, but it might have lost what the original director built upon, which was the attachment to those characters. And so that kind of stuff does still work, and it's visually nice to look at. There are moments when the CGI does falter, but still, for example, the creation of Toothless and the main dragons that you do actually see, they've used the exact same kind of blueprint that they used for the animated versions of it and tweaked them just a little bit here and there, but they still look really well designed. So the dragons are really well designed. It's just there is one set piece where a door is opened and you see sort of like the village with all the dragons around, and it literally feels like you're watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit going between live action and animation. It just doesn't feel right, considering that this is just a live action only. So it has its faults. For people who have seen the original, wait for it to come out on digital. You're not going to get anything different from it, but you can sense the heart is still actually there with it. So I couldn't fault it for that.
Do you think they will progress on and do How to Train Your Dragon 2?
It's done really well at the box office, surprisingly, and I think it is down to the fact that because the audience that this film is tailored at, because there's no swearing in it, the violence is very, very, very minimal in the film. So the audience that is tailored at has not seen, or probably has not seen the original How to Train Your Dragon, unless parents have gone, oh, look, put this animated feature on. Which is a shame because they should watch the original trilogy. So I think it's done well because of that front. I don't know how well How to Train Your Dragon 2 would do if it is live action, because then you are getting up to the times where the children are being born and they'll have had a better chance of seeing the second one or potentially the third one. And it must have taken them a while for them to do this. So
yeah, I would think so.
I wouldn't expect the second one to come out till at least 2027, 2028. Maybe it'll go up against the new James Bond movie. Which
how do you feel about Denis Villeneuve being given the director's role? Because I know you're a fan of his work. Not necessarily you're a fan of James Bond stuff, but you're a fan of Denis.
Yeah, I don't know if you can still see me because I've got the word connecting on my screen with the swirling blue circle.
Yeah. And there we go. And we're back again. Right, okay. I don't know.
We are.
Yeah. But yeah, yours was weird and then mine went weird and we're back. Right.
Tech.
Oh, yes, exactly. Hopefully it'll give me enough videos to edit. And on my screen, we're on the other side than we were before, so never mind. Does not matter. So yeah, we know how you feel about James Bond films. You've seen them, but you're not a huge fan.
The only one I've not seen is the remake of Casino Royale.
And that's the Daniel Craig one you've not seen?
The Daniel Craig one, yes. Okay. I've seen every single James Bond film. Despite the fact that I'm really not a fan of it. I think it's because it was a franchise that was forced on you as a kid in the 80s and whatever. So I was forced to watch them because my mum sort of like did have a liking to Roger Moore.
Yeah.
And she liked and Sean Connery, so she did like the James Bond franchise. I've never been a fan of them. Okay. Never. And sort of like when hearing the news that Denis Villeneuve is going to direct the next James Bond film, the first thing I was thinking of, Christ, they're willing to wait for Denis Villeneuve to direct the next James Bond film.
That was one of my thoughts, because it's like, it's obviously got another Dune film coming up, and it's like,
Messiah.
When is this Bond film going to materialise? It's got to be at least a couple of years, isn't it? Minimum.
Yeah, because he's not starting to shoot Dune Messiah until early next year.
Exactly.
And so Dune Messiah is not tended to be actually come out until 2027. So obviously, as soon as he's finished Dune Messiah, which give 6 months, 8 months, so probably around about September, October next year, when he potentially could even look at James Bond. And so the next James Bond film is not going to come out until at least 2028.
Yeah.
They're willing to wait 3 years. My guess is they've went with Denis Villeneuve, and because one, they definitely wanted a different kind of take on James Bond.
Yeah.
Even though Villeneuve is more of a serious director, and Bond has still gone down the serious route for the last few Daniel Craig films. But I think they don't want to go down the sort of like cheesy, campy Bond route, because those films started to lose track in the 90s and early noughties, and that was the reason why they went with a more dog tone. So they've gone with him just so they've got a serious one, because it's the first film under the Amazon umbrella,
Yeah.
with them owning MGM. And the fact that I think they've got at least one, maybe two, even potentially three James Bond projects already on the go.
Yeah. Like a
So whether it
TV
be
show and a movie and a
TV,
something else.
animated,
Oh God.
young James Bond, something like that.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling they've got a couple of those, and so they'll think that those will bridge the gap, because it'll be the big selling point for Amazon if they've got a James Bond TV series like they thought the Lord of the Rings of Power TV series would do it for them, but it didn't.
No.
And so they'll hope that James Bond is going to be that thing to fill the gap up until when Villeneuve can direct the next Bond.
Yeah. Interesting
That's
choice
my
though.
thinking.
I'm glad they didn't go
Yeah.
with Christopher Nolan. I know people were going, "Oh, Christopher Nolan would be good." No, I don't want a Christopher Nolan. I'm like that with Christopher Nolan. I like his films, but he just looks like too much of a damn perfectionist and too much of somebody who I need to get my own way, or I'm not gonna. It's like, just calm down, Christopher. Just, you're a filmmaker. Go make really good films. And he wanted Final Cut. And apparently, that's why he
Yes.
didn't get it. Which, I mean, I don't know much about Denis, but I would guess he's probably got some sort of Final Cut-ish, but not as foot stampy or demanding as Christopher Nolan probably is.
I think one of the only other directors who I would have thought like looked at that might have done something a little bit different with the Bond franchises would have been Joe Kosinski.
Yeah.
It might have done something a little bit different, which I know you've seen F1, but yeah, I think he would have done something a little bit different because of the way Kosinski directs his films. He sort of like reminds you of the old school action director, but there is a lot more depth to his films than just the action.
Yeah.
So I think he might have actually done a decent job. The only other question now with the Bond franchise is, who's going to be James Bond?
Oh no, if I see the name Henry Cavill once more, it's like, for the love of God, no. I like Henry Cavill, but he's got a crazy, huge fan base. It's like everybody's like, if it's not Henry, I'm not. Never mind the Superman stuff. They're still getting mad at David Cornsweet for being Superman. He's not the proper Superman. Henry Cavill is. It's like, calm down. But
no, he's not. Christopher Reeves was Superman before Henry Cavill was Superman, and so. But yeah, I know who you've just sort of like think they should go with, because you posted it on Facebook.
Yeah. Somebody left a laughing emoji when I said that, and I'm like, I ain't kidding. I think Dev Patel would be amazing as a Bond, but somebody thought it was funny. I'm like, I'm not kidding. So
yeah, and I've got sort of like a person who I think would actually play the role pretty decently if they're going down a slightly younger route, kind of area. I would have originally went with somebody like a Paul Mescal.
Yeah.
But considering how he was in Gladiator 2, it's sort of like, I think he was just there because he's sort of like a name. And I don't know how he would handle it, but I think my choice would be Horace Dickinson.
Okay, what's he been in?
So things like Beach Rats. Right. He was in the last Kingsman film.
Right.
He's been in a couple of films. He's a very up and coming British star, Horace Dickinson. I think he's sort of like, he would handle the role really well. He's got a bit more of a stockier build than what Bond would have, but I think he's phenomenal in Beach Rats. Beach Rats is a brilliant film. That was the first film I ever saw.
I've not seen that. So
Horace Dickinson in.
Put that on my list.
But yeah, I think somebody like a Horace Dickinson. I would have even went with somebody more like Josh O'Connor.
Yeah.
Than somebody like a Henry Cavill. Because you don't want somebody who's muscly as hell. You need somebody who's still got that svelte kind of Jason Bourne look in a way.
Somebody that can kind of blend in. It doesn't look like, you're not going to put the guy who plays Reacher in as Bond, because he's not going to be too much of a secret agent, is he? Because he's like a tree. So
But yeah, somebody like Harris Dickinson, or like as I said, as a push, like a Paul Mescal
okay,
would be sort of like my choice for Bond.
I'm
Will
hoping.
I definitely go to see it? Maybe,
Yeah, well, you've seen all the other ones.
apart from Casino
Apart from
Royale.
Casino Royale,
But
which is very good, but it's obviously I'm not going to go. Oh my god, you got to watch that one. You'll love it because you might not because you're not a massive Bond fan.
yeah,
So,
nope,
I mean, hopefully they might go unknown. Just bring
they
somebody out.
might.
Apparently, there's a short list kicking around that includes Tom Holland, but who knows whether how genuine that short list is. But I'd quite like an unknown. You just know whoever they cast, there's going to be an element of the internet having a complain about it and whinging and oh Bond's ruined and all that sort of stuff. It's just the way the
Yeah,
internet is now,
from what
unfortunately.
I know, that when Daniel Craig sort of like went for the role, actors like Jeffree Star went for the role as well.
Yeah.
Homelander out of The Boys,
Mm,
he went for the role as well. But supposedly his sort of like version of Bond was nowhere near what they were looking for.
yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard that somebody found some audition videotapes from when they were doing the Daniel
That
Radcliffe.
would
That'll
work.
be an
Get him in
interesting
it. Get
Bond.
him in it. Yeah, he'll do it.
When they were doing the Daniel Craig Bond just before Daniel Craig was cast as Bond,
Yeah.
and some videotapes have been found because normally the audition tapes and the audition stuff, it disappears.
Mm,
But somebody found these videotapes that were just thrown out, and it's got the auditions of people like Jeffree Star on there for the last James Bond. And the people who applied, apart from Daniel Craig, were all completely out of their depth.
yeah.
So that's why they went with Craig.
He was a good choice, was
We'll
Daniel Craig. I thought it was a bit too. I'm hoping for these new Bond ones they go one film, one mission, and not
Yeah.
like this 5 film story arc type thing that the Daniel Craig ones went along with. I mean, Casino Royale works because it's the first one and it feels standalone. Quantum of Solace works as a second part to Casino Royale, so you can watch those back to back. But then obviously Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die are all like continuing and trying to tie everything up, which I'm not a
Hmm.
massive fan. I wish we'd get away from shared university, massive story arcs. It's not TV. Just have a movie, standalone, done. You can have a little few threads carrying on to the next film, but
It probably is dependent on how much say Denis Villeneuve does actually have,
mm,
because you look at Dune, and it was always his intention to do at least 2 films.
yeah,
He did actually turn around and see that there's no way we can actually do this in one film. So it was always his intention to do 2 films, and he's never done a sequel before, apart from Dune
yeah,
Part 2, because he did not do the sequel to Sicario, for
no.
example, and he's never done a sequel to Arrival. And so, and his previous Prisoners would be an interesting one to have a
Yeah, well,
sequel.
let's do another Prisoners.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. I
so
got
would
you.
Enemy. Enemy would be a very strange one
It's
to
the
do
only
a sequel
it's the
to.
only one of his I've not seen. Enemy. I've seen that
You
one.
but you know the ending to
I
Enemy.
do not. I do. I didn't even.
I'll leave
I
it.
didn't even
I'll
know the
leave it
film
there because
existed until I was listening to another podcast this week, and they were going through Denise films. Like, Enemy? I've never seen that one. So I may.
Enemy's a really, really, really good
I'll,
film. It's a very good
I'll dig
film.
it out.
But the ending, when you get to the end, you'll go, there is no chance in hell they could do a sequel to this.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that's smart the way Denis Villeneuve has gone and done it, because if it did really well at the box office, the studio would have gone, oh, let's do a sequel. And he's
Nope.
purposely done an ending where there's no potential chance for there to be a sequel at
Yeah.
all. So that's typical Villeneuve. So I wonder how much say he will actually have in it, to the point where he will just do a standalone Bond film where
Yeah.
he might just go, it's an end, it's a line in the sand, a stop, because he would not want to like do Bond films for like 10
No.
years or multiple years.
No.
He'll want to go off and do his own thing. And so, yeah, we'll see.
We'll find.
We'll
We'll
see in
find out in like a
2028.
year who's been cast.
Yeah. The last couple of films, because I'll get on to 28 years later in a couple of moments, I'll throw a quick one out there called Marshmallow, which is a slasher film about kids who go to a summer camp, so the typical kind of thing. And they start getting picked off one by one by this thing in a mask.
Okay.
And so you're thinking, I've seen it all before. However, it adds a twist in it which completely baffles you and sort of like sideswipes you in the fact that it makes you think that this is going to be like a Friday the 13th or something like that, a sleepaway camp, when in fact it's going to do something that would fit really well in an episode of The Outer Limits.
Okay.
So it's
Interesting.
worth looking out for. Marshmallow. I hate that. I thought it was. I don't know where they got the title from, but I think it's just from the summer camp, and they just thought, let's toast the marshmallows on a fire at the summer camp.
Yeah.
You don't even see marshmallows in the film.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they got that name from, but it's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And then yesterday I saw Megan 2.0.
I've heard people saying it's nothing like the first one.
It's nothing like the first one.
Right.
Exactly. The first one has tinges of horror. It's not a horror film. It just has tinges of horror in it. This has absolutely no horror in it whatsoever. It's just pretty much an action sci-fi comedy.
Okay.
It leans a lot more on the comedy side of things. It leans a lot on the action things, and then you've got how AI is affecting the world, which is a typical thing currently at the moment. Which AI can be helpful, which it's helped me in revising for this job tomorrow. But it can be a hindrance in a lot of ways, and so it's sort of like looking at objectively at both sides of the story. Do we need AI? And is AI helpful, or is it a hindrance in the fact that if you give it too much power, will it actually take over the entire planet? And the whole film, the crux of it is there's a Megan-like robot called Amelia, which is Amelia's whole intent is to take over the entire planet.
Yeah.
Because there's this special chip which is hidden somewhere, which she's trying to find, and if she is able to get hold of this chip, she is able to control every piece of electronic items in the world from where she is. And it, like I said, it treads more on the action territory because there is a lot more action set pieces in this, a lot more fights, hand-to-hand combat and things like that. It treads a lot on the comedy elements of it, sarcastic quips of Megan. There is a stereotypical bloke who has got the whole purpose of him being in the film is for him to be sarky.
Yeah.
So it's got that element to it. Again, very similar to like Ballerina, it's popcorn fodder.
Yeah.
It's action. It's not going to tax you whatsoever. It's on for 2 hours. It doesn't feel like it's on for 2 hours. It feels like it's a 90-minute film. It does exactly what it wants to do. It's Ron Seal. It does exactly what it says on the tin or on the cover or on the poster in this instance. Yeah. But yeah, it's fine. If you really like the first one, you'll enjoy this one. If you hated the first one, you'll not get on board of this one, despite the fact that it's being in a different genre. But overall, it's watchable action fluff.
Okay. Yep.
With comedy, which didn't work for me, apart from a couple of lines.
Yep.
Oh, and I'm getting that connecting thing again. So it might drop again.
We'll watch for it crapping out again. It seemed to just carry on and resume when we did cut out. So, if it happens, then it happens again as well. So
it's disappeared. And then on to the last two. So the last two films, you choose which one you want to hear about. Bring Her Back or 28 Years Later.
Let's go 28 years later.
28 years later, surprisingly, is set 28 years after the incidents of the first film, surprisingly. It starts very much like the first two. So an isolated element. So obviously the first one was the monkeys in the lab.
Yep.
The second one was Robert Carlyle and his family.
That was amazing, that
and
scene.
That unbelievable opening 10 minutes with that musical score, which is
brilliant.
Still one of the best openings to a film I've ever seen. Yep. This one, it uses exactly the same blueprint as 28 Weeks Later. It opens with a family, and then the virus is broken out. So the virus happens the same year as 2002 when the first film came out. And so the virus is broken out, and then it fast forwards us to 28 years later. Inside that virus, there was a few kids, one called Jimmy, et cetera, et cetera. And so it fast forwards us to 28 years later on Holy Island, which is in the northeast of England, because most of this film is actually set in the northeast of England. You see the Angel of the North, completely rusted. And so It's set on a small little commune on Holy Island, which is the best place for them to hold out because there is a causeway between the island itself, which it actually is in real life because I've been across that. Because it's at Whitley Bay. You just go to Whitley Bay, you get on a ferry, it takes you across to Holy Island. You spend about 3-4 hours at Holy Island. There's a cafe on there. There's a few lovely areas there. It used to be filled with puffins and things like that. There's no puffins in this one. And then you get brought back because the waves will come in. And if you get stuck on that island, you're stuck there for the night.
Right.
And so that was their thinking. It's a good place to actually hold up, create a society, because the island's big enough to create a society big enough. So you can house a good couple of hundred people on there. And father played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, son played by Alfie Williams, and mother played by Jodie Comer.
Yep.
The father needs to teach the son how to fight for himself, takes him on the island, takes him on a venture for him to kill his first zombie, to which he does. Not a spoiler. Gets brought back to the island. Mother is sick, Jodie Comer's character. Again, not a spoiler. And discovers that on the main island, there potentially could be a doctor that could help or diagnose what is actually wrong with the mother, Jodie Comer. That's the basic crux of the story without giving anything away. The thing with 28 Years Later is it feels like it's two films. Like the first part, it concentrates on the father-son dynamic, right? The father trying to teach his son how to hunt, which you've got the very stereotypical 28 years later, run away from these infected. It introduces a brand new rage virus victim called an alpha, which is a zombie-like being that has got a built-up of testosterone, so they're a lot more tougher.
Wow.
They can take a lot more damage.
They were tough enough
So
in the first two films. Don't need them to be any tougher.
Bullets, you need to sink in quite a few bullets into them for them to be able to actually take them down.
Yeah.
So it's not fully explained how the alphas became the way they did, which I'm guessing is going to be done in the Bone Temple, or the third part. Bone Temple's out in January, which is directed by Nia DaCosta.
Which is like 28 weeks
Marvels.
from now, isn't it? Or 28 weeks from last week, I think it is.
Something like that, yeah. Who did The Marvels, which is a very bad film, and Candyman, the remake, which is a very good film. So I'm hoping Nia DaCosta has gone the Candyman route, which I think she has. But so the first half of the film is about the father-son dynamic with the alphas, him killing his first zombie, coming back, getting lauded for it, and then discovering that his mother needs more of his attention. And so the second half of the film is for mother-son dynamic.
Right.
And taking the mother to the island to try and find a doctor who could potentially diagnose and hopefully fix her. So it does that. And so a lot of the action is forefront in the first half. The second half of the film is more containing the relationship between mother and son.
Right.
And so it's a little bit more pulled back. You do get some action set pieces in it. Personally, I think the action set pieces are better in the second half than they are in the first half, because it feels like they're a little bit more thought out, and there's more danger there because the mother, she can't fight for herself, sort of, not giving anything away. The son is sort of like starting to build up a little bit and start potentially being able to fight for himself, but they don't have somebody there. Again, not giving spoilers away because there might be, but they don't have like the father figure there who is akin to be able to take out these.
John Wick's not on the island, is he? So
nope, because the whole entirety of the UK has been coordinated off from the rest of the world, and so we are our own place, and nobody sets foot in it because the world stopped for the UK in 2002, and so in the mainland UK it's still in 2002 mindset, and on that Holy Island it's more in the like 1930s 40s mindset. But I felt the second half of the film is stronger than the first half. You can see where he shot some of the films on iPhones, and it sort of like reminds you a little bit of how the budget was in the first film. Like it was very stripped back in the first film, which I really did like. I really did not like the slow motion stuff. There is a few action set pieces in the first half which he goes very slow-mo, and I hate slow-mo in horror films. It doesn't work. It never will work because it completely strips out the tension and it just becomes very annoying. So when he stops doing that, he never does it again. So he never goes back to the slow-mo stuff. I think it's written well.
Yep.
It's acted very, very well. Alfie Williams is fantastic as Spike, the young boy. It's his first role as well, but I think he steals the show.
Yep.
There is a lot of heart with the second part, and then obviously the scuttlebutt in regards to the ending.
Yeah, I mean, I
Last,
don't know what the ending is because obviously I've not seen the film, but I've seen a lot of
I'm
people,
not going to give it
a
away.
lot of people getting a bit mad at the ending. They're like,
The ending is a complete tonal shift from what has happened before. But once you've seen the film, and if you think about it a little bit more rather than just seeing exactly what's on the screen, because when you watch the film and you get to the last 10 minutes of the movie, it will completely distract you from what's happened before. And so you'll end up thinking about that last part of the film more so when you come out of the cinema and thinking, what the hell has that got to do with what's happened in the last hour and a half?
yeah.
But if you think about it and you piece the puzzle pieces together, you can sort of see why they went down that route.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me more interested for the Bone Temple. So I wasn't as distracted with the ending as a lot of people were. It's very controversial, though.
Yeah.
And like I said, tonally, it's completely different to what you've seen in the film before. But it's an interesting way to end the film.
I mean, I do trust Danny Boyle, so it's like, you know, I know he's not one of these filmmakers that's just going to do something bonkers just for the sake of doing it. There's a reason that he does what he does. So I am curious to see the whole film. Where does it rank with the other two?
It's the worst out of the three.
Okay.
Because I think they go in the right order of quality. I think the first one is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think the second one's really good.
Yeah.
And this one is it's still, I think it's still it's a good film.
Mm.
But I think the quality of the first two were better than this one.
Okay.
Just because there was more problems with this one, whereas the first one I could barely pick a problem. Because the more you watch that film, the more you get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think this one has got that depth to be able to actually do that. I think you'll pick up a lot more in this film to make your decision because of the ending than you would have in the previous two.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a good film.
Good. I look forward to checking it
And
out.
I trust Alex Garland as well.
Yeah.
Because I think he's a fantastic writer.
The only Alex Scott, I was trying to track it down, was it Annihilation that he did?
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet. And
Netflix.
It's not on Netflix anymore. I couldn't find it the other day.
It was originally on Netflix.
Yeah, it was. I went searching for it. I'm like, oh shit, it's not even here. So I'll probably track that down on disc or something at some point. But that's the only one that I hadn't seen. I'd seen Warfare, which he'd done, which I really enjoyed. And I thought, right, I'm just going to mop up the Alex Garland films that I've not seen yet. So,
Men.
not seen that one either. So it looks like I've got at least
one.
two to watch. Yeah.
Men is such a weird film. It's a 15 Men, but it has something in it which should have made the film an 18.
Really? Okay.
Like this, 28 years later, is a 15. It's an extreme 15. It's like very top end 15.
Yeah.
Because the Jodie Comer's character, for example, says the C word probably about 10 times in the space of 20 seconds.
Wow. That should instantly have made it an 18 just for the whole language barriers that we have here in the UK.
The amount of nudity in the film is unbelievable. There is a lot of nudity in the film. The amount of gore in the film is quite high-end gore. It's a very top-end gore.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised. I read the BBFC's reasoning behind it, but I'm guessing that if it had just that little tiny bit more in it, I think it would have been in 18, but this is like one of the top end 15 certificate films I've seen in a very, very, very long time.
Wow.
Because 28 days later has been downgraded to a 15. It was an 18.
So an 18 when it came out. See, that feels like a 15. Those 28 days.
It's been downgraded for a 15 because it's on the BBC iPlayer.
Right.
That's where you can watch that. And 28 weeks later is on Netflix. Yeah. But yeah, it got downgraded certificate wise to a 15.
Okay.
But yeah, this is like, I would say it features the most nudity out of the three.
Yeah.
I would say in a couple of the scenes it's more violent than the three, and it has more swearing than the three. Yet the first one's a 15, second one's an 18, this one's a 15. So yeah, no sense.
I don't know how they do that stuff. And then what was the final one? Was it Bring Her Back?
Yeah, Bring Her Back.
Which I'd watched. I'd watched the film that those guys had done previously. Talk to Me. I watched that probably like 2 weeks ago for the first time. Knew nothing about that film, and then got a screener for it. I'm like, let's watch it. I really enjoyed that. Really, really
Yeah,
liked
the
it.
Philippou
Yeah.
brothers, who were originally going to be going on to the Street Fighter film after Bring Her Back.
Okay.
But when they got through started to do the process of the Street Fighter film, which they were very eager to do because they are video gamers. I don't know if you know their YouTube channel, the Raka Raka,
Right. Didn't.
which if you watch some of the Raka Raka stuff, it's comedy horror and it's like very OTT kind of slapstick horror,
Yeah.
very similar to films like Brain Dead. It's that kind of
Okay. Yeah.
comedy horror kind of stuff. So if you like that kind of stuff, search for the Raka Raka on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And they were originally going to be doing the Street Fighter film. And then they came up with the idea of bringing it back. And they thought, you know what, let's step away from that. We want to do something original.
Yeah.
We want to do this story that we've wrote called Bring Her Back. We'll get Sally Field on board, which they did get Sally Field. They never thought they would have gotten her. We'll get the rest unknowns, the brother and sister combo. They actually used a blind actress as well in the film, which well done for them.
Yeah.
And then the son, which Sally Field's character has in the film, completely unknowns. They've never done acting before. So we'll thought we'll get that. And it's just about this brother and sister combo who gets adopted by Sally Field's character. However, there's something sinister happening. That's it. It's the best horror of this year,
Okay.
in my opinion, Bring Her Back.
Yeah.
It's sort of like slightly divided a few people. Some people didn't like it at all. Some people absolutely adore this film. I think it's fantastic. It's a lot more malevolent and a lot more nasty than Talk to Me. Talk to Me has got some really good ideas in it, like using the hand, the monkey paw idea.
Yeah.
That it's got some really good ideas, but it feels unique in a way.
Yeah.
Like you haven't seen something like this before. This sort of like takes the horror genre, the possession genre, the sort of like brother sister kind of combo, which we've seen before, and makes you feel sort of like sick in a way where you think to yourself, what the hell am I watching and why am I watching this and why can't I take my eyes off this?
Yeah.
Because there's things that happen in this film where you just think to yourself, why can't I distract myself away from the screen? I shouldn't be watching what's in front of me. And you are, and in a way you're complicit to it. And so it makes you feel slightly unnerving and a bit dirty,
Okay.
like for watching the film. It had a tiny little bit of humor, but this is the most nasty, most malevolent, most twisted, most scary I've ever seen Sally Field.
Yeah.
Like you see a completely different side of her.
She's not known for her out and out, horror movies. Is she, Sally Field? She's more like, if you could pick a relative, you go, I want Sally Field as my auntie or grandmother or something like that. You go, I want her. I like her. She's got likability to her.
You can just imagine watching this with a double bill of Paddington.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are the most different ends of the spectrum I'll have ever seen if you watch it as a double bill. But it's so effective. It's not shot in multiple locations. It concentrates a lot of the film in just the one location area, but it wrings every little bit it possibly can out of that one area. It's dark when it needs to be dark. It's humorous when it needs to be humorous. It's slightly touching when it needs to be touching. I think they get the tone of this film spot on. It is, like I said, for me, it's the best horror film I've seen this year.
Do you think?
Bring it back.
Do you think it's probably likely to still be the best horror film you've seen? Obviously, you've not seen what's not come out yet, but is there anything on the horizon you think might beat it?
There is two films that potentially could. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Depends on how much he leans on the horror with that. And the first trailer that he dropped, I really like the look of that. And Weapons.
Yeah, Weapons looks good. Yeah.
It looks phenomenal. The guy who directed that did Barbarian, which I really like Barbarian. He's doing the new Resident Evil film, which is coming out next year, next September. And the two trailers that I've seen of Weapons, that's instantly got me. It looks outstanding, that film. So potentially that, unless something completely flies under the radar.
Yeah.
So far for now, Bring Her Back is my favourite horror film of the year. And unless Weapons or Frankenstein can top that, it'll still remain.
Nice. I have a new favourite film of the year so far, and that movie is F1. I loved it. I've seen people talking online, and it's just I'm fascinated by the divisive nature of film fans online. They either get mad at stuff they've not seen, or they didn't realize what they were watching, and therefore just go down the wrong path or whatever. Apparently, F1 is just made for fans of Fast and Furious. Not true. I do like the Fast and the Furious movies. I think they should have stopped at 7, but they are what they are, and they're fine. Annette, my partner, absolutely hates Fast and Furious with a passion, and absolutely loved F1. F
I'm the same. I didn't like the Fast. I'm not a fan of the Fast and Furious franchise, and so I'm wondering if I would like F1
Oh
then
no,
if that's the case.
totally you would, because she loved F1, hates Fast and Furious. So it's nothing. The fact that both films have got cars in is pretty much that's the only connection. There's people driving in both films. That's it. F1 is done practically. Fast and Furious ain't done practically. You can see some really wonky, weird lack of physics and stuff in the Fast and Furious
Hmm.
things. Also, F1 is only good if you know all about F1. Not true. I know virtually nothing about F1. I know what it is. I could probably name like Schumacher, Senna, and Lewis Hamilton. That's my knowledge of Formula One. I know it's done in various tracks around the world, and it's very expensive if you want to buy a ticket. Beyond that, haven't a
Yes.
clue. You don't need to. I love baseball movies. I couldn't tell you how baseball works, what the rules are, how the scoring works. Haven't got a clue, but I love baseball movies. F1 kind of works that way. If you know all about F1, it's great. Annette is an expert at F1. She's been to Silverstone, and she was like pointing all, oh, they filmed that here, and they filmed that there, and that's where I fell asleep and all that sort of stuff, because she was drunk. And so she had the experience from knowing about F1. I didn't. It is, and I know you're not a huge fan of this film, so maybe you'll be like, oh God, but it's Top Gun Maverick, but with Formula One. And by that, I mean it's got an amazing soundtrack. The music is phenomenal. Hans Zimmer's back for the music on that. The way they've shot the film, which I'm sure you know, they've built cars around the cameras, and people
Yeah.
driving these cars around the tracks, or the people driving the cars around the tracks. So the action scenes, and there's tons of driving in it, just looks pretty terrifying. I don't ever want to drive a Formula One car, but the storyline is so basic because it needs to be. Brad Pitt, who's 62. I thought he was in his 40s for some reason because I was sitting in the auditorium watching Brad Pitt doing his thing in the film, and I'm thinking, I'm getting tired just watching. My muscles ache. I'm tired. I'm going to go home and have a sleep later on because I'm exhausted. And I'm like kicking myself up the rear end, going, well, he's older than me. Well, a little bit older than me. He's 62, is Brad Pitt. He has no
Hmm.
business being that energetically
Sickening.
fit in a movie.
I
Um,
know.
but it leans into it. I've seen people online going, yeah, but he's too old to drive an F1 car. That's kind of the point. The Brad Pitt character just loves driving for a living. Javier Bardem, who's known him for decades, he owns a Formula One team, and he's like, my team's struggling. I need somebody who's going to come in and win some trophies for me. I'll get my friend Brad Pitt to come in and do some races. It is that sort of older person coming back to a sport, the young people around him going, you're too old to be, I'm going to beat you. I'm the cocky little git. It's that type of storyline. Not going to win any Oscars for screenplay, but it doesn't need to. It's just a very basic, the sort of Rocky Balboa or the Rocky template. Underdog comes in, battles, action scenes. It's 2.5 hours long. I could have watched it for another 2.5 hours. Really, really good.
Hmm.
I hope it makes a lot of money because it kind of deserves to. But I was watching the racing scenes, knowing that they were done practically. The amount of times you're holding your breath, you're like, Jesus, impressive stuff. But yeah, it's currently my film of the year so far. So you don't need to know anything about F1. It isn't made for the Fast and the Furious audiences. Brad Pitt's really good in it. He's such a likable character in this. Somebody accused me of being an AI bot the other day because Variety had put a story out saying that F1 had made, I think it was like 25 million or 10 million, whatever it was, in its opening day. So it
25
was doing quite
on the
well.
Friday.
So I put my little review saying, just got back from watching the latest Joseph Kosinski film, and I do like him as a director, but Spiderhead sucks. I can't make my way through that one. That's just weird, that film. But I've liked everything else he's done. Brad Pitt, super likable. Music's great. But just a general, I had a great time at the movies. I like this movie. Somebody came back going, this is either AI or you're being paid to review. It's like, since when does saying I really liked a film make you a bot or an AI? It's like, no. This guy's still arguing with me because I made the mistake of putting the word super likable. I said Brad Pitt's character is super likable. And this guy on Facebook seems to have a real bug up his arse about that because he's coming back going, can't you speak properly? I'm like, yeah, I can speak properly. Oh, I've looked at your profile. It says you're a publicist. I'm like, well, the thing I wrote about the movie is not me being a publicist. It's me just being a film fan. Get a grip. And he has a real bug up his arse about super likable. I'm like, well, I know what it means. Stu Miller, you're super likable. I know what that means. Other people would. But,
You've got a bug up your ass because I know that's not true.
well, but yeah, F1, loved it. Really, really good. I'm hoping it comes out on disc because it's an Apple movie. I'm hoping
Yes.
for a home release because I will happily add that one to my collection.
They sort of like do need a bit of a break, don't they? But
Yeah,
considering that most of the films, if not all of the films prior to this one, have not done very well at all.
yeah,
Like the last Apple film that I actually watched was The Gorge.
yeah.
And I thought The Gorge was one half of an idea, a good idea, and then the other half is completely just why the hell did they go down that route?
Yeah.
And it would have badly bombed at the box office if that was released at the box office. And considering the amount of money that they're spending on these, they're not going completely throw everything at the wall situation where they're releasing, doing a Netflix. But still, they've not had a break.
No.
Despite they've got an Oscar-winning film on in their catalogue.
Yep.
Yeah, they've still not had a break. So I think, and I'm hoping, or they're hoping that this one is going to be that break that they deserve.
It deserves it. It really does. There was quite a few. We went to see it on the Wednesday about 2:30 in the afternoon, and there was a reasonable amount of people in there. A lot of the older audience, so clearly people who
that was its
time
that
slot.
was its release date.
So we went to see it. We're like, let's just go watch this. I'm fed up of not being able to watch these new films. So I'm like, this has just come out like this afternoon. Let's go watch this one. So we did. Very, very good. Highly enjoyable film. So yeah, and I've watched a whole bunch of older crap that I'll probably save till the next episode, including Bruce Lee's Game of Death. My God, what a mess of a film that one is.
I'm not a fan of Bruce Lee either as well.
It's
I hate martial art films. Hate them.
Some of them are okay, but I have a Bruce Lee box set that's got all his movies in, so it's like 4 of them. Because Enter the Dragon's a separate one, but
I would probably even go out there and say it's my worst genre.
Is it? So it's the equivalent of my musical.
The only martial art film that I can sort of like get on with is The Raid.
Yeah.
The Raid and The Raid 2. That's it. Any other martial art films, they're just no. I'm completely lost on them. Musicals, I can stand because growing up and watching things like Mary Poppins and Sound of Music and all that kind of stuff, that I can stand. Martial art films, God no, it's the reason why they don't release very many of them these days.
Yeah. I think John Wick's about as close as you get to a martial arts movie.
But it's more action thriller kind of stuff than
it's more
the old school Bruce Lee martial art movies.
Yep.
They've just it's a genre that's very close to dead. You see very, very few films martial art wise.
But yeah, it's a Game of Death that we'll come back to at some point because it's that much of a car crash that it needs more than a couple of minutes to talk about. So we came up with a topic where we were going to each pick a filmmaker and introduce this filmmaker to people who had never seen any of their films before. So we'll sort of go along that route. I've picked my filmmaker. I guess you've picked yours.
I've cheated.
How have you cheated?
I've got technically 3.
3 filmmakers?
Yes.
Wow.
The only reason why I say technically is because 2 of the filmmakers work for the same company.
Right.
So I've technically got 3, but 2 in a way.
Okay. I'll be interested. I look forward to finding out what the hell you're just talking about there. But yeah. So if you've never heard of the filmmakers or filmmaker that we're about to talk about, then get your recommendation. I had to really sit and think about mine because I had to go down the route of not what are my three favorite films from this filmmaker, but what three films I think would be a good overview to whether this audience member would like this filmmaker and then dig into more. So that was a bit of a struggle to kick out the favorite films and replace them with stuff that I still like, but aren't my favorites. So who have you got?
So I did not go with somebody like Guillermo del Toro or Ridley Scott. I didn't go down that route at all. And so I'll throw the singular filmmaker out first, and then I'll quickly just do the ones, like I said, they work for the same company.
Yeah.
So I'll put those together. So I've gone with Juan Antonio Bayona. People, when you say his name, if you see a couple of his films, they'll know his films, but they won't know him as a director in a way.
Yeah.
So the three films that stand out for me were pretty much his first three films: The Orphanage, The Impossible, and A Monster Calls.
Yep.
So The Orphanage, he was picked up by Guillermo del Toro. I could have gone with, like I said, with del Toro, but he was picked up by Guillermo del Toro. The Orphanage was originally going to be a del Toro film.
Right.
But he was more busy working on things like Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Around about the time of when The Orphanage was sort of like gestating. And so he was looking for a director who's had got like a similar mentality to del Toro, not looking at films like Mimic, because Mimic was sort of like, anywhere a bit of a different trek for del Toro, considering that he did Kronos not long before Mimic, and Kronos and Mimic are two sort of like different tonally films. One's obviously about a cockroach which has got this disease with inside of it, and the other one is about this device which acts very similar to a vampire, has vampiric qualities. And so he was looking for a director who's had similar mentalities to himself, and he discovered this director, Juan Antonio Bayona, who only just worked on shorts prior to The Orphanage, and The Orphanage is simply a ghost story about a child within inside an orphanage that died, and about this woman trying to discover what actually happened. But it's so tender and so gripping and so tense and scary, and it just encapsulates everything that del Toro could do, but in the body of somebody else. Who sort of like looked at the source material and went, I'm going to sort of like have my take on it, but let's still do it in the mindset of the person who was sort of like helping me with this film, who's a producer on the movie. And that sort of like cemented for me that he was a director that I needed to look out for. And The Orphanage came out in 2007, and then his next film, which was The Impossible, he didn't do until 5 years later. And The Impossible is a completely different film, but still has sort of like a hand-in-hand grip with The Orphanage in the fact it's about a survival of a family. First time we saw Tom Holland on screen.
That was because of Ewan McGregor, wasn't it? I think that's what drew me to watch The Impossible, because I'm a Ewan McGregor fan. And then I remember not long after that came, people were like, oh my God, the kid's amazing. Who's that kid? He's Tom Holland. So, yeah.
And it was based on a story that people knew about, but still, when you can direct a film that grips you about something that you already know, pretty much everything that happened, then you've done your job properly. So the Impossible was that. We knew about the tsunami that happened. Everybody knew about it. It was plastered constantly across the news and newspapers. But for Bayona to do a film, like I said, where he was sort of like, he gripped you and you were thinking, I hope they survive, or I hope that doesn't happen, when you know what's going to happen. You still question yourself. Very similar to like Eddie the Eagle. You knew exactly what Eddie the Eagle was like, but when you watch the film, you just forget about what he's done before, and you're relearning about him for the first time. And so that's what Bayona did with The Impossible. He did something where he made us forget, but we're learning about the tragic situation that happened in it. And with A Monster Calls, I think for me, he melded both The Orphanage and The Impossible together to create A Monster Calls about a child who lives with his mother who's got a life-threatening disease. And the child is accosted by a tree, voiced by Liam Neeson, which when you hear that, you think, oh, God, that's not going to work at all.
No, it does.
And it's just about the child trying to survive through being bullied constantly and having to do these three tasks to ultimately discover what the purpose of these tasks are. and it was one of the only two films that I've cried like a little child in the cinema.
I remember A Monster Calls being due to come out and you being crazily excited, hoping it was really good because you were a fan of Bayonna's before that. And then I remember being nervous for you, going, "I hope it doesn't suck," because there's
Yeah,
nothing worse feeling than, "Oh, this looks great." Oh, it's terrible. And so I was very happy when it came out, and you did thoroughly enjoy it.
it's in my top 10 films of all time, A Monster Calls. And so it's very rare for films to actually just usurp a movie from my top 10.
Yeah.
And if I go back to my 100 films that we did a couple of years ago, which I've got that list
I've
there,
still got a copy of that
which
list too. Yeah.
I can update it, and I can throw out a couple of the films that are in that list and replace them with a few films since, because I have seen a few films since. For example, Flow. If I can get away with it at the end of the year, Flow is still going to be my movie of the year, considering it was my second favorite film of last year. But I saw it last year when it officially released in the UK this year. So technically, I can put it as my favorite film of this year
Yep.
because I made All of Us Strangers my film of the year last year. So Flow's deserving film of this year. So Flow's in my 100 films of all time. But yeah, the A Monster Calls just crept in there and pushed itself all the way up into the top 10 films
Nice.
of all time for me. It's just an outstanding movie. So you can forgive him for the middle section of the Jurassic World
Yeah.
debacle,
Yeah.
which that trilogy, Colin Trevorrow is the one responsible for absolutely destroying that franchise. Because despite the first film is watchable, the third film is not. The second film is a mess, but it's not Bayonna's fault.
No.
It's the studio and Trevorrow just messing around with that. So he's a hack of a director, Colin Trevorrow, for me. You can forgive him for that because then he came back and did Society of the Snow.
Right. Yeah.
Which is on Netflix, which is a fantastic film. So yeah, Bayona for me has just shot himself up there alongside the greats of for me, like Del Toro and Spielberg and Danny Boyle and directors like that.
Yeah.
So Juan Antonio Bayona is the first one, and then like I said, cheated with the second one because I threw out a second one because I thought, you know what, I'll do a live action one, I'll do an animated one. There's an Irish animation studio called Cartoon Saloon, which do not get the recognition that they definitely deserve. Two directors who are pretty much responsible for their output, and that's Tom Moore and Nora Toomey. Tom Moore directed Secret of Kells in 2010, Song of the Sea in 2014, and Wolf Walkers in 2020. And Nora Toomey directed Secret of Kells alongside Tom Moore in 2010. She then did The Breadwinner and the last film that Cartoon Saloon did, which was My Father's Dragon, which is on Netflix.
Yeah.
They are doing a new film, which is out later on this year. But they are phenomenal animators, director-wise, Tom Moore and Nora Toomey. Song of the Sea is an outstanding animated film.
That's the one I've heard of.
It's an absolute outstanding one. Secret of Kells is brilliant. Wolf Walkers is tender at times, but it's gripping. The Breadwinner was Oscar nominated. Definitely deserved to be Oscar nominated. I love that film. It's fantastic, very touching as well. And My Father's Dragon, despite the fact that it being the more simpler one out of all of that ones there, it's still got that Cartoon Saloon heart.
Yeah.
So I couldn't leave out those two. So Tom Moore and Nora Toomey for Cartoon Saloon. So just watch all of Cartoon Saloon stuff.
I hadn't heard.
Outstanding.
I mean, some of the titles you'd rattled off. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. I wasn't familiar with the name of the company though, so it's good that they get a mention.
Yeah, they're an Irish company, Cartoon Saloon, and they do struggle to try and get funding for their films because they don't do that well. Unfortunately, Wolf Walkers was a Apple TV movie, and My Father's Dragon is Netflix, and they did well for Apple and Netflix, so that's how they're able to actually do their next film. But they're not a studio like a DreamWorks or a Disney or even Studio Ghibli, where they can release quite a few films because Ghibli films do outstanding in Japan. Yeah. So that's how they're able to afford their ones. And we know about DreamWorks and other big animated studios. These are very small. So that's how it takes them a while to get films to come out. But 4-year gaps in a way between their films, apart from Wolf Walkers to My Father's Dragon, which is 2 years.
And it's hard for animation as well, isn't it? Because people go, Pixar, yes. Disney, yes. Anybody else, they're not Pixar or Disney. So there's that mindset in the audience where they
Hmm.
might not be willing to give another studio a chance, which is a shame. But
Yeah.
you know,
But yeah, if you see anything in relation to Cartoon Saloon, definitely watch them because they've just hit it out the park with each one of their animated features.
cool. I was torn even like an hour before the podcast about which filmmaker I was going to go with, because there was one I wanted to go with, but then I felt I need to do my favorite filmmaker first, just to sort of launch this little segment which may pop up from time to time. So I'm going with my buddy Oliver Stone, who hasn't made a narrative movie in probably like 9 years. I think his last one was Snowden, which was a whole bunch of
Hmm.
years ago. And he was at San Diego Comic Con when I was, and it was like, I'm in the same room as Oliver Stone. This is amazing. But he is somebody that I go back way into the 70s. So when I was a young kid, I remember seeing Midnight Express, which he didn't direct, but he wrote the screenplay for and won the Oscar. And so I became familiar with the name Oliver Stone when he'd gone on to write Scarface and Conan the Barbarian and Year of the Dragon and all that sort of stuff. But then he started directing his own movies. And because I knew his work from Midnight Express and Scarface, I'm like, let's check out what he can do in his directing gigs. He did the Michael Caine film, The Hand, which I think is probably just a director for hire type role, in the
Hmm.
same way Bayona did that Jurassic Park one. It's like, do you want a paycheck? Yes, please. Thank you. Done. So it's not one of their own projects. It wasn't until the mid 80s when he did Salvador that he sort of started doing his own brand, which is this. They are narrative films, but they're based in reality, and they're kind of hard hitting and kind of political in most ways. Stone did serve in Vietnam, so he had a yearning to do Vietnam movies the way that he remembered Vietnam. So Platoon was a big success for him, and everybody, who's this Oliver Stone person? Let's investigate him more. I nearly went for Platoon as one of my choices, but I'm like, if you don't like war movies, then you might not go watch some other Oliver Stone films. So I've gone with one Vietnam movie and two non-Vietnam movies. The first one I've gone for is Wall Street from 1987. Stone's father was a stockbroker, and so Oliver wanted to do this film that was based in Wall Street and show the craziness and the greed. And Michael Douglas is in there doing his "Greed is Good" Oscar-winning speech. It was nearly Tom Cruise that got the Charlie Sheen role, but Charlie Sheen, having worked with Oliver Stone in Platoon just like the year before, fit perfectly into that. It's a film where you don't need to be a financial expert to understand the film, because it's a film about the Charlie Sheen character just being rather greedy and thinking he can scale up the success ladder, and doesn't end perfectly for him. That's not a spoiler. But Wall Street, they did do a sequel many, many years later. Not as good as the first one, but it's still watchable. The next film is Born on the 4th of July. That was the Vietnam film that I wanted to chuck in, because it's more than just a film about people in the jungle having a fight with the Viet Cong and stuff. Tom Cruise plays a real guy, Ron Kovic, who is injured in Vietnam, is then confined to a wheelchair. It's about him battling to try and not go nuts.
Hmm.
Very epic. I'd love to have seen Tom Cruise win an Oscar for that one, but unfortunately, nope. Third film, JFK, 1991. Cast list, crazy. John Candy, Joe Pesci, Tommy Lee Jones, Kevin Costner. Very epic film. Very conversation beginning, so you can watch JFK and it doesn't go, this is what happened. You can have your own mind up about whether you believe the film, who you think's lying. The way the film is made, it uses multiple film stocks, which he would then go on to use to crazy extremes in like Natural Born Killers and U-Turn and stuff years later. But JFK was a huge renter in the video store. We're in the UK, we didn't know too much about John F. Kennedy other than the fact he was a president that was assassinated and who knew who did it. But the film, it doesn't presume you're a historian. It teaches you
Hmm.
enough, but doesn't ram it down the throat like a textbook. But it's so that's my three choices anyway. If you want an introduction to the director Oliver Stone, JFK, Born on the 4th of July, Wall Street. If you want an introduction to the writer Oliver Stone, do check out Midnight Express.
Yeah. The only thing, just to sort of like tarnish that just a tad,
Yep.
please just skip over Savages. Because I
I
think
don't mind Savages, but it doesn't feel like
I really could not get on with that film at
it doesn't
all.
feel like an Oliver Stone film, and I think that's why he
Yeah,
did it. I think because it's like
that was
it's an odd film
it
for
was
him to do.
it was pretty much what we said when we reviewed it on the Monday Movie Show, because it was 2012 when Savages came out, and so we were sort of like in our second year of doing the show, and Andy was the big Oliver Stone fan. I knew of Oliver Stone. I'd
Yeah,
seen quite a few of his previous films, because I remember renting Natural Born Killers
yeah,
and just felt how completely different this was, considering I had seen a few of his films prior to Natural Born Killers, and I watched Natural Born Killers and just went, this is weird, this is violent, this is completely balls to the wall,
yeah,
and this is a director who really just does not care.
yeah,
That he's just going, you know what, I'm here to offend.
yeah,
And he did that brilliantly with Natural Born Killers.
yeah.
And so Andy was the one who originally reviewed Savages. I hadn't seen it when he actually did see it. And so I knew that I was eventually going to re-review it for the home release section.
Hmm.
And so I watched Savages, and I really just could not get on with that film at
No,
all.
I don't mind it. I don't know if I like it a little bit more because it's an Oliver Stone film. I'm a little bit two-faced like that. It's like, if Oliver Stone made a film that I didn't like, and then I watched it, and I'm like, this is great because Oliver Stone's done it again, yay! I am a bit two-faced like that, but Savages I think is
Hmm.
okay. I do own it on Blu-ray. It's a film I've seen a few times, but I would much prefer things like Nixon, JFK, Heaven and Earth. His gritty, more reality-based films than
Yeah.
Savages or U-Turn or whatever. But yeah, he's been my favorite filmmaker for decades. So I thought I need to launch with him. My next one was going to be Abel Ferrara, who I do like, and I had the pleasure of meeting Abel Ferrara at one point, and he is exactly as you think he would be if you meet him. He's a very unique guy. But
Yes. You've got to be in the right mindset, though, to watch a Abel Ferrara film.
yes, it's not a popcorn sort of thing.
God,
I'm
no.
partway through rewatching King of New York, and Annette walked in the bedroom last night, and I was watching it, and she's like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "King of New York." She's like, "I've never seen it." And then she looked at it with a sort of, "The hell's going on in that film?" I'm like, "That's kind
Yes.
of like an Abel Ferrara movie, that one." Yeah, you
Yeah.
walk in the middle, you don't know what the hell's going on. So, what are you up to this afternoon? Any sporting events or anything you're watching? Or
None whatsoever. I know you might have picked up on that because of the fact I'm wearing a
I
Newcastle
did?
United t-shirt.
Yep,
But I just thought, you know what, I'll put this on because I can very rarely wear it outside.
yep,
Because I live in Sunderland, and Sunderland and Newcastle are now in the Sunderland's now in the Premier League.
yep,
So wearing this outside is a death threat.
yep.
We're waiting to happen. So I thought I'll just put this on. But no, the sport football wise doesn't return properly until
Ah,
August.
okay,
So
it shows you how much I know.
the Premier League season is over. You've got the Club World Cup on it, but I'm not too much interested in that. But no, I'll just relax, play some video games, cook some food, settle my mind down because I know it's going to go into panic mode for tomorrow.
Yeah. You will do fine, but again, people can say that to you, and it still doesn't stop you going into panic mode. So.
Exactly.
But yeah, good luck with the interview tomorrow. Let me know how it goes on. But you probably won't find out
I will
straight
do.
away anyway. They do that horrible mean thing where they're like, "Oh, we'll be in touch." You're like, "When?"
Yeah, they did actually say they'll say they'll be in touch within 5 days.
Yeah, I hate that. Just tell me
So
now. Just say, look, if I've ruined it, just tell me now. I don't mind.
I should find out by the end of next week. So on the same day, I might find out that my friend has become a father for the second time, or if I've got a new job or not.
Wow,
So it might happen on the same day.
busy week.
Yay.
Busy week. But yeah, you enjoy yourself, Stu. And
Same with yourself. I'm trying to stop my cat from biting my headset.
oh yeah, no, I have to hide cables. The cats do like to chew a cable, and also you can go and open your window and let some cool air in now, can't you?
I'm going to do that. It is sweating in here.
Yeah, I'm melting. I only got changed before this podcast. Now I need to go get changed again. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Apparently, it's supposed to be
ditto.
even hotter tomorrow as well. Just to you
Uh,
know,
I'm going to be sweating in that interview, not just from the fact that I'm nervous, just because it's too
because it's
hot.
too warm. Yeah. Put
Yes.
your apparently put your fingers in some ice. Apparently that was sort of film. An actress taught me that one. You have a finger in ice, it cools your body down. So maybe that'll work. But you
Okay.
might end up wanting to wet yourself. if you do the wrong hand. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, it has that kind of thing.
You enjoy your afternoon, and
Same
I'll
with
chat to you
yourself.
later. So, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.